Chapter 5. A Family's Hidden Legacy. The scroll fragment in Elara's hand was more than a burnt piece of history. It revealed a hidden truth about her identity. Her family, known as devoted caretakers of the Sunstone Quarters Temple, had always lived simple lives of service. They were respected for their dedication, not for anything extraordinary. Elara believed her family's legacy was one of quiet faith. She never suspected that a powerful and dangerous secret from Eldoria's past was connected to them. The soot-covered parchment described a powerful connection that blurred the line between mortal and divine. Her family name appeared beside ancient symbols from the restricted sacred archives, suggesting not service, but guardianship, possibly even a direct link to a forgotten deity. This was not a story ever shared or remembered. It was a secret meant to remain buried and forgotten. As the truth sank in, memories she had once ignored began to make sense. She recalled secretive conversations from her childhood and her grandmother's quiet warning. "There is a weight to our names, a burden you will one day understand." At the time, Elara thought it referred to their temple duties. Now she realized it pointed to a hidden lineage that had been deliberately concealed for generations. Her great-uncle, usually focused only on temple work, once said, "The price of remembering is a silence that spans lifetimes." Elara had thought he meant the sacrifices of faith. Now she understood it as a deliberate effort to suppress a dangerous truth. The silence was not devotion, but concealment. The scattered memories formed a clear picture of long-guarded secrets. Her family had not simply served a deity, they were bound to one. The forgotten patron linked to her ancestral name was more than an object of worship. It suggested lineage and inherited power. The symbols on the fragment, once seen only in forbidden texts about ancient bloodlines, were signs of an old pact. They implied her ancestors were not just followers, but descendants or chosen vessels. The meaning was clear. Her lineage was divine. The simple history of the Sunstone Quarters Temple had been a cover for a far more powerful heritage. Her family's quiet lives were likely meant to avoid attention and protect a dangerous secret. The fire that destroyed the sacred archives was not just an attack on knowledge, but an attempt to erase that hidden connection. Elara reconsidered the small details of her family's past. Their strong health, sharp intuition, and lasting vitality had always been linked to their faith. Now she wondered if these traits were signs of a deeper inheritance. Perhaps the divine essence targeted by the fire was not symbolic, but a real power passed down through her bloodline. The scroll fragment grew warmer, sending heat through her body as if responding to her blood. She felt a surge of power that was unfamiliar yet natural, connecting her to Eldoria's ancient myths. The quiet archivist realized she was not just studying history, she was part of it. Her life had become the point where myth and reality met. She recalled the legends of the first Eldorians, powerful beings said to exist before the great kingdoms. She now wondered if those stories reflected her own ancestry. The forgotten deity linked to her name might have been benevolent, or something far more complex and dangerous. The questions reshaped her understanding of the past, suggesting a history much greater than any official record. The fire became a turning point. By destroying the archives, it exposed the secret her family had hidden for centuries. Their legacy was not harmless, it was powerful and dangerous, protected so carefully that someone had tried to erase it completely. Whoever set the fire knew about her family's connection to this forgotten power and intended to destroy it. Elara looked over the ruined hall, the smoke rising from the embers. The destruction now felt personal, an attack on her heritage and an attempt to silence a long-hidden truth. Her careful handling of the fragments turned into determination. This was no longer just about saving old texts, but about protecting her identity and the legacy tied to her ancestors. The weight of remembering became real, settling on her as a heavy responsibility. She finally understood why her elders had spoken in whispers and lived cautiously. They had known the truth and carried it in silence, hoping it would stay hidden. But the fire showed that the danger had not passed. It had reached them, and now it had reached her. The scroll fragment pulsed in her hand, a sign of the hidden power tied to her bloodline. Her family's simple life had been a cover to protect a dangerous legacy. Elara was no longer just an archivist. She was the inheritor of a divine lineage that someone had tried to erase. The fire had not destroyed her history. It had revealed it. Though the future was uncertain, she understood one thing clearly. The legacy was real, and she was now responsible for it. Smoke still clung to Elara's robes, a reminder of the fire that destroyed much of the sacred archives. Beneath the destruction, however, she felt a new resolve. Finding the scroll fragment and realizing the fire was a deliberate act of divine erasure did not break her. Instead, it strengthened her determination. She refused to let the forgotten god and its legacy disappear. She needed to understand the destruction, uncover the history behind it, and preserve what remained. Her initial questions were met with polite but firm evasiveness. When she spoke to Master Theron, the head archivist, about cataloging the recovered fragments, his usual friendliness was replaced with stiffness. He described the unfortunate loss and the long process of recovery, avoiding eye contact. He assured her that any important findings would be shared later, but it was clear he expected her to step aside and leave the sensitive work to others. The archivists, once united by shared passion, now treated her with clear discomfort. Conversations stopped when she entered, whispers faded, and eyes quickly turned away. It wasn't open hostility, but a subtle change in their behavior that suggested fear and an unspoken order. She sensed they were not her enemies, but they were no longer her allies. In some way, they had become part of the effort to suppress the truth. Even routine tasks became difficult. When she asked for access to restricted sections that had survived the fire, she faced new bureaucratic barriers. Forms went missing, authorization codes failed, and access logs were said to be temporarily corrupted. It felt as though the system had been adjusted to block her. Each obstacle strengthened her suspicion that her discovery was not just academic, it was a threat, and someone was trying to contain it. During one of these frustrating searches through an old catalogue, she noticed him. He wore dark charcoal and blue robes, his face hidden beneath a deep hood. He moved quietly, often appearing at the edge of her vision. She had seen him before the fire near the archive's outer walls and assumed he was just a passerby or guard. Now, his silent and constant presence felt deliberate and unsettling. He never approached or spoke to her, but his presence felt heavy, as if he were constantly watching. He stood at a distance while she inspected the damage and remained nearby when she questioned the archivists. Even in the less damaged sections, he was there, a quiet reminder that her actions were being observed. One evening, as Elara worked late in the damaged wing studying a surviving mural, she felt his presence more strongly than before. The air seemed tense. She turned and saw him standing near a collapsed archway, silent and still in the fading light. He said nothing, but his presence was clear. It confirmed that her investigation had been noticed, and that her search for the truth was being quietly discouraged. This was not an accident or simple negligence. The obstacles, the averted gazes, the missing documents, and the cloaked figure all pointed to a planned effort to stop her. The goal was to create doubt, isolate her, and prevent her from uncovering the truth. Burning the records had not been enough. Someone was determined to erase the truth and silence anyone who searched for it. Elara returned to her small chamber, the stone walls offering little comfort. The scroll fragment, wrapped in clean linen, rested on her bedside table. Though it no longer felt warm, its meaning weighed heavily on her. The quiet resistance she faced confirmed that her connection to the forgotten god was more than a personal secret. It mattered to powerful, hidden groups. This was not the work of jealous scholars or ambitious patrons, but something older and more widespread. The idea that a god's existence required active protection changed her understanding. She had always believed the pantheon of Eldoria was eternal and secure. Now she saw how fragile that belief was. Gods could be erased, their stories removed, their followers scattered, and their power weakened without belief. Those behind this effort were using subtle but steady methods to achieve that goal. The quiet resistance was more frightening than open aggression. It showed fear, careful planning, and influence strong enough to affect the archives themselves, an institution meant to protect knowledge. The fire was likely only the most visible part of a larger effort, one aimed not just at controlling information, but shaping belief itself. Over the next few days, Elara closely watched the routines of the archives and noticed subtle changes. Some areas now had quiet restrictions, and scrolls that were once accessible were marked as under restoration or quarantined. Senior archivists who once shared knowledge freely now gave brief, cautious answers, their expressions tense. The atmosphere felt restrained, as if everyone sensed an unspoken risk. The cloaked figure remained nearby. He never threatened her or approached, he simply watched. His quiet presence felt deliberate. At times, when she sensed his gaze, the message seemed clear. She was being observed, her actions noticed, and she was not meant to continue. This silent tension was deeply unsettling. It felt like a slow battle, fought through pressure and control rather than open conflict. The archives, once her sanctuary, now felt like a chessboard, and she knew she was not the only one making moves. She realized the fire was not an end but a beginning, an open strike in a deeper effort to erase the past. Her search for the truth about her heritage had become an act of defiance. The scroll fragment was more than a relic. It was proof that the forgotten god had not been fully erased, and she was determined to protect it despite the silent opposition around her. The path ahead was unclear and dangerous, but she could not turn back. She was no longer just an archivist. She had become a guardian of memory, caught in a struggle far greater than she had imagined. The archives no longer felt safe, and she understood that the real conflict was only beginning.